17-year-old Sarah Grace Patrick has been arrested and charged with murdering her mother and stepfather, whose bodies were found shot in bed in February by their 6-year-old daughter. Shocking the community, Sarah Grace had publicly mourned the loss, speaking at their funeral and posting emotional tributes on social media, while allegedly covering up her role in the killings. Police say she turned herself in and is now facing 2 counts of murder. 48 Hours True Crime is on the case. There are stories so brutal, so unnatural, they tear through the illusion of safety like a bullet through glass. The kind that makes even the most composed detective exhale and mutter, "What the hell happened here?" The kind where love turns into a weapon, and the one you raised becomes the one who ends you. This isn't fiction. This isn't TV. This happened in a quiet Georgia town where good people prayed, where families smiled in church pews, and where 2 devoted parents were gunned down in their sleep. And the most unthinkable part? The girl accused of pulling the trigger stood over their caskets and spoke about kindness. Her name is Sarah Grace Patrick. 17 now. 16 at the time her mother and stepfather, Kristen and James Brock, were found shot to death in their bed. It was their youngest daughter, only 5 years old, who found them. Not the teenager. Not the girl who had every reason to hear those gunshots. No, it was the child. The child who walked into a bedroom and stepped into a nightmare so dark it will echo in her dreams for the rest of her life. February 20th, 2024. Carrollton, Georgia. A modest home just south of Atlanta. The police entered the house that morning and found silence. A chilling, unnatural silence. Kristen and James Brock, beloved, humble pillars of the community, were lying in bed. Still. Lifeless. The kind of stillness that makes even seasoned investigators flinch. No signs of struggle. No signs of forced entry. Just 2 warm bodies growing cold in the place they should have been safest. The case went cold for months. No suspects. No leads. Nothing that made sense. Kristen's father offered a $5,000 reward, begging the public to come forward. He said whoever did this was cold-blooded. And he was right. The kind of cold that doesn't flinch when a gun is raised at a sleeping loved one. The kind of cold that goes to the funeral and pretends to mourn. Because Sarah Grace did just that. She walked into the church, stood behind the podium, and delivered a eulogy for the 2 people she's now accused of murdering. She said, "Although there's nothing we can do to bring them back, we still have control over how we treat people." The congregation nodded through their tears. They believed her. How could they not? She looked like grief in human form. But grief, it seems, can be faked. The truth? Cannot. Took time. Time to gather what police would later describe as a mountain of evidence. Time to peel back the mask and stare directly into the eyes of betrayal. The sheriff's office didn't rush. They couldn't afford to, because everything about this case was wrong. Wrong in the way only a family tragedy can be, where the killer knew the home, the patterns. The quiet hours when the house went still. No forced entry. No robbery. Just execution. Intimate. Silent. Final. Sarah Grace had lived in that home. She had moved in and out. Shuffled among relatives but always tethered by blood to Kristen. She was the one who dialed 911. She was the one who stood outside the house and told police she didn't know what had happened. She let them believe it was someone else, some monster, some stranger. But if monsters wear faces, hers was smiling on TikTok. Because what came next shocked even the most jaded followers of true crime. Sarah's social media told a different story, one of performance, of manipulation, of theater so twisted it bordered on the sociopathic. In one video she cries, pleading for prayers for healing. In another, she posts a tribute to the very people she's accused of killing. They don't know it, she wrote, but a year from now, me and my 5-year-old sister would find them wrongfully shot dead in our home. Weeks after the murders, she shared a video of herself walking into the funeral, face solemn, tears genuine, or well-rehearsed. On Mother's Day, she posted a photo of her and Kristen, calling her my best friend. And then, just a week before her arrest, she posted from a beach. A beach. While her parents lay in the ground, while her sister rebuilt a life without them, Sarah Grace was dancing for likes. Crying on camera, building a digital monument to grief she may have fabricated. Because it wasn't just that she acted like a grieving daughter. It's that she used that grief as a performance. One curated, filtered, captioned for sympathy. as if she thought the audience wouldn't see through the curtain. As if she thought no one would notice that the girl mourning online might also be the girl holding the gun. It would be easy to say she's evil, to reduce her to a headline, a monster, a lost cause. But the truth is never that simple. What drives a teenager to allegedly commit the ultimate betrayal? Was it resentment? Jealousy? Something darker, abuse, trauma? Secrets too painful to utter out loud? We don't know, and maybe we never will. Law enforcement hasn't revealed the motive. They don't need to. Not yet. All they need is what they say they have. Overwhelming evidence. Not theory. Not speculation. Evidence. Investigators knew from the beginning that something wasn't right. The lack of forced entry. The victims in bed, unaware, vulnerable. The 911 call from Sarah after the 5-year-old allegedly discovered the bodies. The subtle inconsistencies. The silence where there should have been reaction. The grieving daughter who grieved a little too loudly, a little too publicly, in a way that felt wrong. And in a case like this, the hardest part isn't the crime. It's the disbelief. The fracture in the human psyche that comes when you realize the predator didn't come from outside the walls, it grew up within them. Ate dinner with them. Sang with them in church. Said, "I love you," and may have meant it until the moment she didn't. We are left with a question that echoes louder than any gunshot. Why? And the tragedy deepens because that question may haunt us forever. There's a child still living. The little girl who saw what no child should see. Who will grow up with scars invisible to the eye, but carved deep into the soul. Her world collapsed in a single night, and if the allegations are true, it was her own sister who struck the match that burned it down. But here's the part that refuses to leave your bones, the part that settles in your gut like stone. Sarah Grace stood in that church, looked into the eyes of mourners, and spoke about kindness. She mourned them while knowing exactly how they died. And for a moment, she fooled us all. But the truth, unforgiving, relentless, was waiting. It always is.